Let's talk about a really simple but honestly powerful idea today. We're going to look at how just one small shift in a daily habit can totally transform your financial anxiety into genuine peace. And it all kicks off with the simple habit of measurement.
Okay, let's just start with a super direct, honest question. And be honest with yourself here. Think about it for a second. Do you actually know where your money went last month? Or are you kind of like most of us, just sort of crossing your fingers and hoping it all worked out? You know that feeling, right? That low-level financial stress that just hums in the background. But here's the thing, for so many of us, that feeling doesn't actually come from not having enough money. It comes from not knowing. It's the uncertainty, the lack of awareness that really creates the anxiety. And that brings us to the core principle of this whole explainer. It's a simple truth that works everywhere, in business, in fitness, and especially with our finances. Whatever you measure improves. Just the act of paying attention, that's what sparks the change.
And of course, the flip side is just as true. If you don't track your money, it has this sneaky way of just vanishing. It's usually not one big thing. It's a quiet drift. $1 here, $5 there, and it just slowly eats away at your financial foundation.
All right, now for a lot of people of faith, this is where a really important question comes up. You might be thinking, if I'm meticulously tracking every single dollar, doesn't that show a lack of trust in God's provision? Isn't that an act of anxiety instead of an act of faith?
Well, the source material points right to Scripture for the answer. In this verse from Luke, Jesus himself uses this really practical analogy. He basically says, hey, if you're going to build something, won't you first sit down and figure out what it's going to cost? That doesn't sound like a lack of faith, does it? It sounds like wisdom.
So you see, this is the big mental switch we need to make. The misconception is that tracking your money equals distrust in God. But the truth, when you really look at it, is that tracking is simply an act of wisdom. It's about being a good steward of what you've been given.
And this is absolutely crucial. We're not talking about some anxious, controlling plan that leaves zero room for God to work. We're talking about planning that's done with humility, knowing where it all comes from, and with faith, trusting that He's going to guide our wise decisions.
So how do we actually do this? Well, here's the good news. You don't need some crazy 10-tab spreadsheet or complicated software. The goal here is not to overwhelm you. It's really just about adjusting one simple habit.
Here's how simple it can be. The source suggests you just record 3 things each month. First, how much did you actually manage to save? Second, where did the rest of it go? Like, what did you actually spend it on? And third, how did all that move you closer or further from your big picture goals? That's it. Pretty doable, right?
And I know it's tempting to think that tracking that $5 coffee or that tiny subscription doesn't really matter, but those small numbers, they matter a lot. Why? Because it's the tiny, consistent habits that end up building our big financial future.
So what happens when you start doing this? Well, you get some immediate payoffs. First off, any waste that was kind of invisible before suddenly becomes crystal clear. Second, seeing any progress at all, even a small win, is incredibly motivating. And finally, the idea of discipline stops being this vague, impossible thing and becomes a realistic, achievable goal. So the fundamental shift is this. You move from just guessing and hoping to actually leading. You stop letting your money dictate your stress levels, and you start intentionally telling it where to go to serve your goals. And that leaves us with 2 very clear paths, doesn't it? On one hand, money that's ignored will pretty much always create anxiety because of all the unknowns, but money that's managed with intention, even if you don't do it perfectly, starts to bring a sense of order, and with it, a sense of peace. So what does this look like day to day or month to month? Here's a super simple review process. At the end of the month, just sit down and look at your spending honestly, no judgment. Then take a second and thank God for what He provided that month. And finally, don't try to fix everything at once. Just pick just one habit to adjust for next month.
And this is where it all comes full circle, connecting the practical with the spiritual. This small act, this monthly review, this responsibility over the details, it's a real, tangible way to live out the principle of faithfulness. It's when we're faithful with the little things that our capacity and our faith really begin to grow.
Let's be crystal clear about the ultimate goal here. This is not about a white-knuckled grip trying to control every single penny. The real goal is to shift our mindset to stewardship, to simply honor God by wisely and intentionally managing the resources that He's entrusted to us.
So we end right back where we started, but with a beautiful addition. What you measure improves. That's the practical truth. But the spiritual promise, what you steward well, God is able to multiply, and that is the peace that comes from faithful measurement.